Welcome to Changing Higher Ed, a podcast dedicated to helping higher education leaders improve their institutions. With your host, Dr. Drumm McNaughton, CEO of The Change Leader, a consultancy that helps higher ed leaders holistically transform their institutions. Learn more at changinghighered.com. And now, here's your host, Drumm McNaughton.
Thank you, David. Our guest today is the Honorable Dr. Sethuraman Panchanathan, the Director of the National Science Foundation. Dr. Panch, as he's known, is a computer scientist and engineer and the 15th Director of the NSF. He is a leader in science, engineering education for more than 3 decades of experience in both higher education and government, where he has designed and built knowledge enterprises which advance research innovation, strategic partnerships, entrepreneurship, global development, and economic growth. Under Dr. Panch's leadership, NSF has made great strides in reaching out to smaller colleges and coalitions to broaden the research across the U.S., and he joins us today to talk about their motto, Innovation Anywhere, Opportunities Everywhere, and how NSF can help smaller institutions and communities raise their profiles and help their citizens. Panch, welcome to the show.
Delighted to join you, Drumm. It's a pleasure.
I'm so much looking forward to this. Our guests, the folks who listen to the podcast, if they're from an R1 and an R2 institution, they know NSF really well. But for smaller institutions, they may not know NSF, so I'm really looking forward to being able to explore what NSF is.
Happy to talk about NSF, Drumm. It's always, as I said, a delight to do that. NSF stands for the National Science Foundation, and it was founded in 1950, now close to 75 years later. What NSF has made possible, if I were to put it in a single set of words, is what I call people, people, people. People who are idea generators, who are discoverers, explorers. People who are the folks that make things possible, like entrepreneurs, working in industry, working in academia. And then people who then are translators, who are able to take great ideas and build unbelievable societal outcomes and economic outcomes for the nation. So NSF is all about people. To your point, therefore, when you said that this is to see how NSF relates to all institutions, I'm proud to say that NSF is probably an agency that has presence and impact in all 50 states and territories of our great nation.
Wow, that's amazing. How is it that you came to NSF? I know you've got a broad background in higher ed, but how did you get to NSF?
I was very fortunate to have NSF support me, my ideas, through projects that were funded by NSF, various kinds of projects. Through that, not only was I able to foster my ideas, but more importantly, train the next generation of researchers and practitioners. And I got to know NSF as a person who applied for grants, won some, did not win many, and you learn a lot more, as you know, through failures than successes, as they would say.
Oh, yes.
But I also had the unique privilege of being appointed by President Obama to the National Science Board in 2014. And this board oversees the National Science Foundation and also advises the President and Congress on science and technology-related matters. So I had a much more deeper and insightful view of NSF, having served in the National Science Board. So when this opportunity presented itself, Drumm, in 2020 to become a director of the National Science Foundation, to be nominated, I was thrilled, because I always felt that this was an agency that makes amazing things possible all across the nation and has done unbelievable things in the last 75 years. And I can give you many examples later. But it has even more potential over the next 7,500 years to unleash talent, ideas, and prosperity all across our great nation. So therefore, I felt that this is a perfect time and a match for me to be able to come and participate in the process of what NSF can do for the future.
Well, you've done so many great things at NSF already. But one of the things in some of the conversations I had leading up to our recording today was you're saying your motto, innovation anywhere, opportunities everywhere. That says NSF to a T, doesn't it?
Absolutely. NSF has always been making this happen, Drumm, and I'm trying to emphasize and articulate what NSF has done, but even more importantly, what NSF is doing and will do into the future. Because as you know, at NSF, we want to enable more discoveries, more innovations, and more technological developments at speed and scale.
So if you could relate this innovation anywhere, opportunities everywhere to the DNA of NSF, because I think that's critical. And what you're doing is taking that DNA and pushing it out so that it touches more people.
Wonderful, Drumm. I'm glad you used the word DNA because this is how I've been talking about NSF since coming to NSF. As you know, the DNA has two strands, highly interwoven and synergistic and symbiotic. One of those strands that NSF makes possible is explorations, discoveries, curiosity-driven research. The other strand that interweaves this is use-inspired, solutions-focused translations or innovations. And that these are not two different things. We all know discoveries and explorations make possible translations and innovations. But it is also true that those translations and innovations point to more new discoveries and explorations. And this back and forth is so rich, and that truly expresses what NSF is. It makes possible both of them. And at this moment in our nation, it is important that we strengthen that at speed and scale.
Well, tell me more, because there's something there that is like, this is exactly what we need.
Yes. So if you look at this concept, right, we all know that talent and ideas are democratized. They're everywhere in our nation. They are in rural areas, urban areas. They're across the broad socioeconomic spectrum. They are in all 50 states and territories of our nation. They are across the broad and rich diversity of our nation. So when you say that talent and ideas are democratized and everywhere, and that we know that innovation is also possible because of the fact that talent is everywhere, this is a moment, therefore, for us to unleash that idea of opportunities for everyone everywhere, and thereby making possible innovation everywhere and anywhere across our nation. Let me give you a concrete example, if that's helpful.
Please.
Just like the Bell Labs of 1980s and 90s, where people were inspired. I was a graduate student at that time, inspired by the coming together of academic researchers, industry practitioners, all working together to not only make possible great discoveries like the transistor, but also make possible great people that were trained and inspired by the Bell Labs presence, that today they are all doing amazing things as they're entrepreneurs or leaders in industry. So when you take that kind of inspiration, we hope at NSF to be able to bring together academia, industry, government, communities, and more of that set of partnerships to create these crucibles of innovation all across our country, but around topics and themes that are more akin to the place, what I call place-based innovation. Just on Friday, I was in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. We were launching one of our new programs called Regional Innovation Engines. And that competition made possible 44 new $1 million investments all across our country around those place-based innovation topics being lifted up. In Hazleton, Pennsylvania, I was with Representative Ranking Member Cartwright of the Commerce, Justice, Science Appropriations Committee of the House. There, we were essentially launching this Regional Innovation Engine pilot around industrial hemp. I never knew, Drumm, that hemp can make possible unbelievable products the agricultural backbone that is right there, producing the hemp, the industrial hemp, is now turned into building materials. Not only ordinary building materials that actually capture carbon. Therefore, it is carbon negative kind of building materials. Producing ink from that, and a whole host of things that is made possible by all aspects of hemp, ranging from the seed to the stem to the bark, every part of hemp being useful. Just as one example of how to demonstrate that innovation can be anywhere around those themes and topics that are native to that place. When you work in that in partnership with, in this case, Penn State University and other community colleges, you find that those talent that is eager to participate in that prosperity of that region is now inspired, enabled, and a skill being developed. And now you can imagine industries of the future and entrepreneurial ventures being created there that creates the jobs right there, exploiting the innate potential of that region. That's what I'm talking about.
I've got a question along those lines. I mean, this just kind of popped into my mind. I ended up driving up to Colorado Springs for a client engagement, came back, and, I noticed there's ethanol in almost all the gasoline in this area and stuff. I'm guessing that was an NSF funded project. Am I right?
Absolutely. You will find fingerprints, I call them tire tracks, to many of the industries having some of the fundamental basic research funded by NSF, of course, in this case, Department of Energy, and other entities. We want this to be not thought of as everything is only NSF. NSF is a huge and an important vehicle for ideas and talent being trained and expressed, but also other agencies participate in that, which have a mission-driven approach. And in this case, because it is energy, clearly the Department of Energy. And NSF works in partnership with such agencies because it's a whole of government approach of how do you make sure that STEM ideas are exercised in its fullest form and how STEM talent can be expressed in its fullest form. Mm-hmm. So when I came to NSF, one of the things that we did, which is an articulation of this, is a new directorate, NSF directorate, in over 30 years called the Directorate for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships, or the TIP Directorate. This Drumm is a cross-cutting directorate. That is, it picks from all the great work that is being made possible, discoveries being made possible, whether it is quantum, whether it is AI, whether it is biotech, whether it is advanced manufacturing, whether it is advanced wireless, you name it. All those basic discoveries now being pulled by this cross-cutting directorate in partnership with industry, economic development ecosystems, foundation, and other partners, venture capital partners, and so on, to be able to pull this out to industry-based outcomes as well as new entrepreneurial venture-based outcomes. But it's not just alone. We talked about the DNA. Now that set of experiences and interactions now funnels back more new ideas into what can be done in mathematics, what can be done in physics, what can be done in chemistry, what can be done in geosciences, biosciences, engineering, social behavioral economic sciences, or combination of all of them working together to take real problems and find real solutions that can be scaled, that is cost effective, that's impactful, that results in societal economic prosperity, as well as ensuring national security.
It sounds like from back in my days when I was working with entrepreneurs back in the early 90s, tech transfer was a big deal. This sounds like tech transfer on steroids.
You said it beautifully. That's exactly what it is. How can you take full advantage of the fundamental research capacity that is unleashed at scale by NSF's investments, but also taking full advantage of that to do tech transfer on steroids, to train the next generation of talent at the highest intensity and intentionality, as well as how do we now inspire more new discoveries so that we might have even better outcomes and translations in the future. All of that at the same time. You can say this is a moment that NSF is on steroids as an agency. And this tech transfer is one manifestation of that. if you want to put it that way.
I think that's a good analogy. One of the institutions that I worked with just recently did a lot, and this goes to the people aspect that you mentioned earlier. Their flagship, R1, all the new faculty hired, they took them through a 1 year, this is how we conduct research, kind of an orientation, but it wasn't necessarily all research. It's how do you apply for grants? How do you build teams, etc.? My sense is that really folds in nicely with your new TIP directorate.
Absolutely. It's not only folding nicely with the TIP directorate. I'll give you an exact manifestation of that in one of the programs that we launched with TIP. You already saw the democratization of innovation, ideas that are being funded by NSF. And I welcome people to go and look at the type 1 RIEs that we funded. There's a nice website that they will see the different projects across the country, and they will be amazed by the kind of ideas that are being fostered. But this is also about NSF now saying we are not only relevant, as important as it is, to all the R1 institutions who are doing amazing work, and that they are being invested in by the ideas that faculty have, and then training the students and the ideas being nurtured. But it is also about, as I said, talent and ideas are democratized. How do we make sure that the R2 institutions, community colleges, minority serving institutions everywhere across our nation, tribal colleges, they too have good ideas? How do you build that research capacity? You brought up a very interesting point that this 1 year training program that is introduced in R1 institutions, in terms of how do you actually build a solid research program, or how do we build a research enterprise? This is something that is more intentionally done in R1 institutions and some R2 institutions, right? Increasingly. We all know that a research enterprise includes human capital, practices, and processes related to research development, research administration, broader impact activities, technology transfer commercialization, corporate relation, public-private partnerships, mindful of research integrity, compliance and security, research policy, support of student research training, and research leadership. You see all of these components that are being nurtured and fostered in established institutions. But institutions which are smaller or don't have the resources to be able to do that, I always felt that if ideas are there, how do we provide this set of support structure for those institutions to also express their talent so that it does not become a downward spiral, but in fact it's an upward spiral. And so we launched a program called GRANTED. GRANTED is an acronym for Growing Research Access through Nationally Transformative Equity and Diversity. How do you make sure that you build the critical research enterprise and the capacity at the national level by making the position, skill, knowledge needed to build a robust research infrastructure, which is broadly inclusive and accessible to all institutions of all sizes and resources? So we have invested in the GRANTED program, and this GRANTED program is going to make possible how do we support the development and improvement of sustainable institutional resources, specifically research enterprise support functions and services. Because we recognize that the barriers that exist in accessing resources to support competitive research and training programs and projects in STEM domains is a limitation to how are we able to express the talent and ideas everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that goes directly to the second portion of your motto. This goes directly to the opportunities everywhere, the research, education, partnerships, collaboration, and the research infrastructure. The GRANTED program directly to that research infrastructure.
Correct. Absolutely. So, I was going to tell you that when I talked about the Regional Innovation Program and the TIP Directorate, because you posed the question of the granted-like activity in the TIP Directorate. Let me give you just one example, and then I'll answer the question that you just raised also because it's related to that. We launched a program called Enabling Partnership to Increase Innovation Capacity, or EPIIC. This is a $20 million investment which helps minority-serving 2-year undergraduate and emerging research institutions to build the infrastructure and access the resources they need to grow external partnerships and tap into the regional innovation ecosystems. So this program, for example, provides interactive training and network opportunities to build collaborations. Now let's talk about opportunities everywhere, therefore, which is very, very critical, as you said. How do we move forward in doing the things that NSF needs to do to energize these opportunities everywhere? We all know that millions of talented individuals across our country want that chance to participate in STEM, solve real world problems, and revitalize their communities. And we cannot, must not, should not leave them behind. So, what we are doing, therefore, is focusing on 4 strategic areas on that one. The first one is research. How do you create a foundation of knowledge to work from NSF's investments in a range of curiosity-driven and use-inspired scientific research in order to increase our understanding of the science of broadening participation? So we have programs like Broadening Participation in STEM, Entrepreneurship and Innovation, called BP Innovate. We have a program called EDU, Education, Racial Equity in STEM Education Program. These are programs by which we are using what NSF is really good at, is through formal research processes, understand how do we examine the limitations of people participating and how do we increase inclusion and accessibility in the innovation and entrepreneurial space. The second dimension is education. How do we invest in interventions that enhance educational opportunities, build capacity, and increase student uptake and career sustainability? We have many examples of this, but I'm going to again give you only one. The Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program. This program supports recruitment, preparation, and development of effective, diverse, and capable STEM teachers who can teach in high-need school districts and serve a diverse student population, creating important role models. As you know, teachers, you and I, and everyone can point to a teacher that truly inspired us. How do we get that at scale? Therefore, every student can be inspired by that STEM spark. And in order to do this, Drumm, we need to develop partnerships. That's the third dimension, which is a critical component of how we can have meaningful engagement throughout our nation's communities, research associations, and like-minded nations. Let me give you an example. Last year, we announced an $8.6 million partnership with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Schmidt Futures, and Walton Family Foundation to help fund initiatives that will improve the quality of US STEM education for all students. And the fourth one, the research infrastructure piece. So we are also investing in our nation's research infrastructure so that students, teachers, administrators, and researchers at every type of institution, I want to underscore that, at every type of institution across our nation have the access to the tools and resources they need to accelerate research and education. That is the context of granted. That's the infrastructure that we need to make sure that we are growing this research access for all institutions, for everyone across our nation.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I've always thought about things from a holistic perspective, and it's rare to see government entities doing that. So congratulations. This is fabulous. So what, for a small institution who has a few faculty members who do want to conduct research, what can they do?
That's great. So all they need to do is to get in touch with our granted program coordinator. We have an Office of Integrative Activities. Get in touch with our granted program coordinator to see how they can take their institution, their faculty, their ideas, and present it in the highest possible competitive form to NSF so that their ideas can be invested in. So NSF is ready to serve. And please take advantage of NSF to see how you can lift your ideas and the talent in the institutions that you are in to the highest level of possibilities. And so we are here to engage with you to see how we can, through the partnership, make sure that investments that catalyze progress can be made everywhere across our nation.
I think that's really great. I mean, I put in for an NSF grant shortly after getting my doctorate, and I got turned down. It was like, okay, I guess this isn't the way I'm going. providing people on staff like you do who can help coach people through the process and give them ideas on how to do it. I mean, if I'd had that years ago, I might not be doing podcasts right now. I might be doing more research.
You will still do research and do podcast because you're so good at it, Drumm. We don't want you to give up that thing that you're really good at. But you're absolutely correct. There are a lot of people who get disillusioned by the fact that their ideas somehow never rise up to the level of being invested in so they can express their ideas in their fullest form to benefit humanity, society, their institution, themselves and their research aspirations, and most importantly, to lift up students that they deeply care about. As a faculty member, I deeply always care about students and how we can bring the best out of the student. And that's what NSF is engaged in. As I said earlier, people. That's the business NSF is in.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit more about mentoring.
It's a very important component of how do you lift people up. We all can find, as I said, a teacher that inspired us, when I said earlier, but we can also attribute to mentors in high school through teachers and others, mentors in universities. I've had many mentors, and I've had mentors outside in the community, mentors who are in industry, who taught me about the important things of how to work on societally meaningful problems, how to make tangible progress with ideas. We all rely on mentors. Mentorship is an exceedingly important thing for everyone. And so increasingly I find I'm very heartened to see all education institutions are putting more emphasis on not just teaching, learning as important as it is, but mentorship. And so I'm thrilled, and NSF is here to support a number of programs that provides for such mentorship. As you know, every dollar we invest in terms of talent, it's all tied to faculty members, researchers, institutions who always have implicitly mentorship as a component of that investment being used in its fullest form to express that talent.
And so with the mentoring, do you have a program, and I'm guessing it's granted, that helps mentor institutions on setting up research programs? Is this the granted program?
Yes, absolutely. So what it does is a granted program not only has direct access to all of the features that we talked about that creates a successful research enterprise, it also connects you with the institutions that have that already in place. And so they are able to mentor you. They're able to network with you, forming a network of institutions that can take help from one another and therefore express their ideas in their fullest form. So all of this is the mission of Granted, is how do we do this at speed and scale across a range of institutions across all parts of our country.
I think that's going to be a real big hit for you.
I really hope and wish that this will result in tangible outcomes being achieved in a rapid time scale. I already see evidence of that in terms of the regional innovation engines and the kind of ideas that are coming up. But I know that over time we will see the metric of how institutions are participating, succeeding, and creating that unbelievable set of outcomes that we desire, namely people who are mentored, trained, and prepared for the future. Mm-hmm. As you know, these institutions that are serving our nation so well, the two-year institutions, the minority serving institutions, the Research 2 institutions, they all get an amazing set of talent of very diverse nature, all kind of diversity. I talked about rural, urban, all areas, and so on. They are the folks where that such talent enters most of the time. And to be able to get the talent to also be lifted up and given its full opportunities should be the goal of an agency like NSF, in addition to doing the great things that NSF does always, express the ideas and talent in the established institutions in its fullest form.
Well, Panch, I thank you so much for your leadership there, for all you've done. I'm seeing a very different NSF over the past few years, and it's really wonderful to see. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Drumm. I want all your listeners to know, as I said earlier, we are here to serve. We are here to serve. NSF, I always say, is a catalyst, an enabler, an investor, but the real work happens in the institutions. And I'm grateful. You expressed thanks to me, but I in turn express gratitude to all your listeners from those institutions that are doing a fantastic job every day. And we want to be there to help them, to serve them, to see how we can participate in making sure that their aspirations of doing more for the communities that they are in, we are here to work with them in partnership.
Oh, very good. 2 questions.
Yes.
First, 3 takeaways for university presidents and boards. What is the message you want them to hear?
There are 3 takeaways that you outlined, and so I'm going to limit that to what I call input, processing, I'm a computer scientist, and an output. Okay?
Got it.
The 3 parts. On the input front, I think if institutions can really partake in ensuring that the highest quality STEM inspiration happens in the K-12 schools, so that the talent that comes from the K-12 institutions to universities and community colleges are, given the best inspiration, so they will want to come to those institutions that, the presidents and the boards are working with. That will be a great thing on the input side to broaden access, to broaden the kinds of students that would typically not get access to those institutions, having access to those institutions. Okay. Second, within the institution, how do you break down silos and barriers and give the kinds of rich experiences to students to not only major in their disciplines, maybe major in multiple disciplines or majors and minors, but more importantly, experiences like entrepreneurial experiences or research experiences or internship experiences in industry or experiences to do service work. All of these things mold the individual while they are at the university, and that they are breaking down the barriers and silos means that the student gets the rich exposure of all inspirations that is there in the university. They may be enrolled in computer science, but they would take courses in psychology and anthropology and so on. So they become, as you said, a holistic individual when they graduate from the university with all these experiences. And that they will take on real world challenges, therefore, and use this team spirit and the collective inspiration to solve real world problems. So that kind of an environment that they create within the institution. Third, the output. At the end of the day, institutions, I describe them as engines of innovation, engines of economic development, engines of making possibilities and solving problems for community and society. Therefore, in partnership on the output side, how can you partner with local cities, local industry, local entrepreneurial ecosystems, all kinds of communities in the region, and therefore work with them in partnership? So the output is not only the great talent that you send out, the talent hopefully will be inspired by that partnership, but more importantly, deliver for the partners. And that's what builds ecosystems of prosperity. And so all the 3 components, input, as broad as it can be, as enriched as it can be, processing, as enriched and empowered as the students and talent can be. And then, of course, the institutions also having the ability for faculty to express their ideas in their fullest form in amazing discoveries, amazing translations that they can do because of their ideas for the faculty, creating environments like that. And then the output, how do you take responsibility for the entire region, is something that if institutions, the leaders and the boards can focus on, I think can be extremely valuable.
Thank you. Those are great. And of course, NSF certainly will recognize with grants those researchers who partner with community, et cetera. It's one of those little keys to get checked off to say, oh, you want your application to rise up to the top of the pile? Do this.
Yes.
This has been great, Panch. What's next for you? What's next for NSF?
What we are doing at NSF, as you described, we are essentially looking at this agency as an agency of transformation, innovation, an agency that makes possibilities, opportunities everywhere, innovation anywhere. I'm deeply committed to that. That's why I came to NSF. As I said, when he asked me how did I find my journey into this place, I'm deeply committed to seeing that we make that opportunities everywhere, innovation anywhere, as not just only a tagline, but a reality everywhere across our nation. That's what I'm singularly focused on. And when you talk about me, I never think about what is next for me. I'm focused on what is it that I need to do now And that always has been my focus. And that automatically takes care of where things happen and where the journey takes you. You need to do the thing that you need to do right now to make a difference.
Spoken as a true studier of yoga. Be in the present.
Yes.
Panch, this has been an honor and a privilege and a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Drumm. It's been truly an honor, pleasure to talking to you too.
I look forward to the next time. Let's do this in 6-9 months and see what you've done.
Happy to join you again. Absolutely. That's a guarantee. I will be happy to do that.
Very good, sir. Take care. Thanks for taking time out of your busy day to join us.
Thank you, Drumm.
Thanks for listening today, and a special thank you to our guest, Dr. Panch Panchanathan, and for his sharing with us what NSF is doing and where it's going. Panch, thank you. I look forward to having you on the show again in the future. Our next guest is Dr. Raj Achambadi, president of the Illinois Institute of Technology. Raj will be joining us to talk about what Illinois Tech has done to reimagine education, including building new pathways to inclusion and affordability. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
Changing Higher Ed is a production of The Change Leader, a consultancy committed to transforming higher ed institutions. Find more information about this topic, along with show notes on this episode at changinghighered.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the show, and we would also value your honest rating and review. Email any questions, comments, or recommendations for topics or guests to podcast@changinghighered.com. Changing Higher Ed is produced and hosted by Dr. Drumm McNaughton, post-production by David L. White.